course, gets back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin being perfect money and everything that comes with it. And we see that happening on the ground for sure. Following his career, going back, to when he was a mayor, is that he saw an opportunity that the country had become, I would say, somewhat paralyzed with political dysfunction. And he said to himself, you know what? All it would take is a little spit and polish, and we could totally turn this thing around. And just started the momentum, started the ball rolling. And of course, the people responded really well to this. And he did simple things at first, like getting people a house, getting somebody a roof, getting something, building a road, building a bridge. And it just resonated. And then it just became this groundswell of support. And now it's being transformative on the whole nation is happening. And I love on Twitter, they have the Minister of the Interior who just tracks public projects. And every day they're like, a new road, a new bridge, a new irrigation project. And they're just like rebuilding everything from the ground up, especially for Bitcoiners. So as a journalist, I feel compelled to be here to report on it because it's this is the tip of the spear for the Bitcoin revolution. And we're seeing it happen in real time on the ground. And it's interesting that the perception still lags reality. So you still have the mainstream press reporting on El Salvador in ways that are, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years out of date. And in that gap, a lot of people are moving here, entrepreneurs and young families looking for a new beginning. And they're taking advantage of that arbitrage between what's the facts on the ground and the way it's being reported. Well, the wall of worry.
Yes.
Right? So nobody believes it. I remember when Apple Computer turned around in the late 90s, nobody would believe it. Michael Dell from Dell Computer told Steve Jobs he should find a real job and just declare bankruptcy because Apple Computer was going to zero. Now it became the most valuable company in the world. So yeah, I think that's a good point. It has been a 200-year downtrend. If you look at the fiat money world, the introduction of central banks, the Bank of England and all the subsequent central banks and how they dominated the globe with their fiat money Ponzi schemes, and that bubble burst, and now we're seeing the rise of those economies and countries that were the client states of those central banks, and the result is a complete reversal. And the market is not recognizing this, and but for a few Sharpies that are moving in and taking advantage of this complete reversal. Well, that's the diaspora is moving back, which is huge, because they've got talent, they've got expertise, they've got capital. Then you've got the elimination of all the gangs, which is like adding a $6 billion dividend to the economy, because that's the amount that was being extorted. Then you have just the Bitcoin layer as a base layer for the monetary unit that is transforming the economy. And if all those things added together, it results in a very positive GDP. Now, they just said for the quarter, GDP is going to be 2-point-something%. They're not going to have a recession in 2023. And in fact, they're going to have another boom year. So it's going to be one of the boomiest year of any country in the world, because all those things are coming together in a confluence of goodness.
Yeah.
The restaurant scene, and we have artisanal artists and chefs, which is like the vanguard of an artistic movement. So how do you express the Renaissance 2.0? It's expressed artistically. And this was the artifacts of Renaissance 1.0. We know it from Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. We go to the Louvre Museum in Paris, you'll see what happened in Renaissance 1.0. So what we'll see in 2023 would be the emergence of Salvadoran art and artists that'll make global impact. And that, I think, will be the artifacts for Renaissance 2.0. That's how you quantify it, and that's how you will represent it. It's taking place during an epoch in history of global financialization. So that was not the case during the Renaissance 1.0. You still had economies based on crafts, and GDP was measured by export-imports of stuff. And you didn't have the financialization that you have in the 21st century, the 20th century, and the 21st century. So, you have right now, as you alluded to, the collapse in this 200-year bull market in the bonds. And we're seeing this flame out spectacularly in the FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried catastrophe, where people are beginning to realize how everything was collateralized by everything else. So he purchased Robinhood, for example, the online trading app, by borrowing money against one set of collateral that was collateralized by a fake scam token, that was collateralized by a loan, that was rehypothecated from a hedge fund. And so that whole Ponzi scheme, a hologram of Ponzi schemes are, are evaporating, and into that mix comes a country like El Salvador with a Bitcoin standard that is now representing, as you call it, Renaissance 2.0, and it's hard to measure exactly beyond this simple GDP measure. But I think in 2023 we will start to see what that means sociologically with the population.
But
that's really the place to be, is El Salvador, in terms of if you're a Bitcoiner. That's why when I say that if you are a Bitcoiner, you need to visit, for one thing, you need to visit El Salvador and see what it's like to have a Bitcoin standard, a Bitcoin is legal tender, and an orange-pilled president, and a population that is completely aware of it. The adoption rate here, when I say it's 100%, because everyone is aware of it, and once you become aware of it, you are changed by it. We say that you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And that can happen just by thinking about it, because if you're thinking about an absolutely scarce synthetic digital commodity that is replacing all previous forms of money going back hundreds of thousands of years to give us perfect money, perfect transactions, and a seamless interconnectivity, and the liberation of the collective unconscious, you see that we are on the cusp of what we would call the Bitcoin singularity. And it's happening right here. The portal into the Bitcoin singularity is probably underneath one of these volcanoes. I go out there every morning and I search for it. And I go up volcanoes and I climb them and I look for the portal into the Bitcoin singularity, because I know it's here. And we're making a little film about that right now. I'm seeking a producer for that. But
Okay.
the Bitcoin search for the Bitcoin singularity through the jungles of El Salvador. In Los Angeles, I equate the earthquakes there with death. But here, when I feel it, I feel life. It's a complete different feeling. It's just like Earth, giving birth. So it's like you're riding the volcano, you're riding the wave, you're riding the jungle pulse of all that vegetation out there, just screaming for oxygen, and it's just coming out of every possible square inch of fertile soil, and all the coffee oozing out of the beans and down my throat into my gullet, giving me that buzz that I only get in El Salvador. So I can truly see beyond the Bitcoin singularity.
Exactly.
A certain egalitarianism, and these big corporations are constantly taking advantage of that. It could be the banking industry, the pharmaceutical industry, or any of these industries. They're constantly just taking advantage of the basic American kind-heartedness to rip them off. And they're just going to kill the golden goose. They're just not going to run out of middle-class Americans to rip off. And then what? Top.
I've been to the top of the volcano.
Yeah, I may not get there with you.
That's how we met Josue.
It's gigantic, land of giant dogs.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we have to get back there soon. Our buddy Josue.
Yeah. Well,
that's right. So, he's a smart guy. I think he's got good taste in podcasts.